we've been talking about resilience planning and all the different ways we can do that. So what I wanted to do is just quickly highlight some of those things. So for our resilience planning highlights, we are hearing common themes, as Elizabeth said. We're thinking about educating local decision makers. We're talking about making sure that folks know that resilience measures are protecting our local economy. We're looking at what areas are vulnerable to flooding and storms. What can we do to protect our community from the next big one? We're looking at creating solutions for the whole community. You know, don't matter how you vote, doesn't matter where you live. We're talking about communities as a whole. Where are our vulnerable neighbors? How does this project that we're thinking about affect the community as a whole? And then, of course, which community members can act as ambassadors as we are trying to reach the whole community? We're looking at using local resources and expertise, things we already have. So who lives here? We've heard a lot of times that folks are participating in the RAFT and other tools that happen to just live in the community and they're invested in its success. So businesses, residents, things and resources that we already have. Are there local organizations such as Wetlands Watch that are ready to be project partners? We've also heard a lot from people like Friends of the Rappahannock. Like, these folks want to be engaged, and so we're just making those good connections. Things we wish we had known, right? It is always better to be over prepared than under prepared. You know, we had a situation last year in which we had a hurricane incoming. There was a lot of preparation that was done. There was a lot of resources mobilized. Turns out we didn't need it. Hurricane didn't come this far north, but we were prepared. And so that's what made all the difference, from needing and not having to having and not needing. So big overarching theme: nature is the lens through which we can choose to view infrastructure, utilities, housing, economic development. We're thinking about tomorrow's problems today so that we can save money, save lives, and we're sustaining our Virginia coastal communities. We're thinking, again, public education is key, right? The comprehensive plan process is an opportunity to inform citizens about current and pending natural risks and all the ways in which storms, flooding, rising seas, they will affect everyday issues like that: water supply, energy, economic development, transportation, healthcare, housing. All of these day-to-day things, they're going to be affected by these natural forces. So if we start shaping what we're doing and what we're planning using that lens of let's think about these natural forces and these natural risks, then we can prepare for tomorrow. We're thinking about these practical ideas. We've covered a bunch of them, but they're kind of falling under these big categories. We're thinking about tools, land use, the assets we already have, and what we can build. So tools that we've kind of identified: the RAFT is a big one. We've heard about that. The COW, that's what I'm going to tell you about in just a second. Mary Carson's going to talk about CRS and the NFIP. Land use, there's a couple of cool examples that we can quickly cover, but you can always go look up more. We're thinking about Inwood Forest as a project in Houston, the DAC Park in Rotterdam, one of my favorites. Thinking about assets, we're talking about things like natural and nature-based features that we're going to use an integrated approach to combine things we already have with things we can build to protect our shorelines. We're thinking about living shorelines. This is new technology to help stabilize a shoreline. Conservation easements, protecting land. Things that we're building, we're looking at that infrastructure in particular. We're looking at new development. We're going to think about building that on higher ground, directing development to higher ground, looking at where are we putting our utilities, sewer, water, how are folks going to have access to that? So under our tools heading, the RAFT, we mentioned this. The RAFT is a tool to help identify opportunities for increasing resilience in your community, bringing together partners across the region to implement lasting solutions. You'll see the link there. This can also be posted on our website. So if you don't have a chance to write it down, it will be clickable later. The COW, this is a good one. This is done by folks at the Center for Watershed Protection, just outside DC in Maryland. Very cool, historic, and also naturally threatened. There's been a lot of flooding in Ellicott City where they are based. But they've developed a tool called the Codes and Ordinances Worksheet to help locality use the comprehensive planning process to be more forest friendly. We're looking at tree canopy and how we can break through these sort of silos that we get into in planning using ordinances and code sections that might overlap to help create to reach this goal of more forest cover. Another link right there, so you can go check that out. I think it's a neat project. And the idea here is that we're talking about tools These are not tools that make more work for you. The idea is that these tools are making your work easier, right? You can dig a ditch with your hands, you can dig a ditch with a backhoe. We're hoping that the RAFT and the cow and these other tools are your backhoes. Land use, like I said, Inwood Forest, it's a project in Houston. They're building 12 interconnected stormwater catchment basins that are doubling as recreation areas. So if we're building a ball field, we're building the new high school football field, you know, can we think about multi-purpose uses for these areas that are, you know, it's a bad day if your ball game gets canceled, but nobody's house got flooded. So thinking about these intersectional uses for the land that we are already going to build on. DAC Park, it's a great project in Rotterdam in the Netherlands, where they already have a lot of flooding issues, very similar to what we're experiencing. They're dealing with it through actual construction, as well as some of the more traditional dikes and seawalls and things that we've already seen. They're actually dealing with it in terms of building their cities around flood resilience. So this one in particular, they actually are building a dike with buildings inside of it. So the dike is helping to catch the rainwater in the stormwater catchment basin. The sides of that stormwater catchment basin are new buildings in construction. And actually one of them is a car park, which you can see pictured there. We're thinking about assets that we already have. We're using our shorelines as the natural buffers that they already are and can be. We're just adding to them using things like living shorelines. We're using natural plantings. We're creating habitat. We're reusing natural products like oyster shells, expanding the protections to the assets we already have. We're talking about natural and nature-based features. The idea is that we have natural features. We can build nature-based features to mimic those, things like oyster bags and oyster reefs, and combine them to have an overall better product. We're preserving those shorelines. Conservation easements. We've heard a lot about folks are saying, hey, I want out. Can I donate my property? Or, hey, I need a tax break. Can I donate my property? These are opportunities for conservation easements. These are partnered protections for lands of special value, whether it's conservation, historic preservation, sometimes all of the above, that can act as natural barriers to flooding and critical habitat. Building, and we're thinking about here, what are we going to build? What do we have to build? What is already built that we're going to have to potentially move or adjust? Where does your community get its water? We're thinking about the aquifer. Is it a finite resource? What can we do to make sure that there is enough water? Is there a saltwater intrusion issue? This may become a problem. And we're thinking about equitable access down the road. Is everyone, if folks have wells, are they going to be able to connect to municipal water if their well becomes undrinkable? Are folks going to be able to afford the cost of municipal water and sewer? So do your community members have these standalone septic systems that are going to be affected by rising water levels? You know, nobody really wants their sewer backing up into their kitchen. It's happened to me. It was unpleasant. So thinking about ways that we address this on a community scale. Again, higher ground, we're thinking about directing new development, infrastructure, utilities, critical services like hospitals, directing those to higher ground. Bottom line, coexist with the coast. I borrowed this a little bit. The Netherlands, theirs is make room for the river. I know our PDCs have said fight the flood. We're coexisting with the coast. So that's our theme. The RAFT is one tool. We've talked about a couple of others, but together we are empowering communities to do all of those things, fighting the flood, coexisting with the coast, making room for the river. So any questions from anybody? That was my quick presentation and hopefully a lovely segue for Mary Carson.